Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and pick up exactly where we left off, right at the threshold of the self. Previously, we unpacked this incredibly mind-bending idea that our conscious experience is essentially a transparent, controlled hallucination. We're all just navigating the world through our own internal reality dashboards. But, that leaves us with a massive, glaring question about how we actually communicate. So today, we're going to explore the mechanics of the bridge that makes connection possible. Because we established that we are all operating inside our own virtual ego tunnels, right? You have your reality dashboard and I have mine. So the ultimate question is, how on earth do we actually transfer complex internal states to one another? I mean, I can't just literally hand you my thoughts. So how do two completely separate, enclosed, intelligent agents sync up and share a unified reality?
Well, cognitive scientist Steven Pinker reminds us that we accomplish this miracle through something we honestly take completely for granted every single day. We take these vast, unbelievably complex ideas and we code them into a stream of exhaled noises, hisses, hums, squeaks, and pops that someone else can then unpack in their own mind. Think about it. With just a few subtle shifts in the squeaks I'm exhaling right now, I can put a brand new idea in your head about the origins of the universe or, a recipe for baking bread. It's a literal miracle of expressive power.
Now, to understand what this bridge actually is, we kind of have to clear the brush of what it isn't. A lot of people confuse language with written text. But, as Charles Darwin pointed out a long time ago, spoken language is an instinct. It's found in absolutely all human societies. Babies just babble naturally. Written language, on the other hand, is a relatively recent, schooled invention. Alphabetic writing was invented only once, roughly 3,700 years ago. So, writing is a technology, spoken language is a deeply ingrained instinct.
And this brilliantly highlights a second major myth we need to bust. True language is not defined by arbitrary prescriptive rules. Think of your high school English teacher insisting you never split an infinitive, which supposedly means Captain Kirk made a huge grammatical error when he said to boldly go. Or the rigid rule against double negatives, making Mick Jagger's "I can't get no satisfaction" technically incorrect. But those are just prescriptive rules, and a lot of them were actually just clumsily copied from Latin. Descriptive grammar, which is how real people actually speak out in the world, is the true living language.
In fact, dialects that sometimes get written off as incorrect are actually highly sophisticated. Take African-American vernacular English, for instance. The phrase, "he be workin'," isn't some corruption of standard English at all. It utilizes a highly sophisticated tense rule. He workin' means he happens to be working at this exact moment in time. He be workin' means he is steadily employed. This just perfectly proves that language is a grassroots, bottom-up wiki built by millions of people. It's not some top-down mandate from a strict grammar committee.
Which brings us to an absolutely crucial third distinction. Language is not thought itself. A lot of us feel like we think entirely in complete sentences, but that's simply not true. We know this because babies, and certain animals, even those with only a very minimal knowledge of language, possess incredibly complex cognition. They register cause and effect long before or even entirely without complex speech. Even as adults, if I ask you whether two 3D shapes are identical, you mentally rotate them using visual thinking. No words required.
To really see this in action, I love Steven Pinker's playful shampoo bottle example. It really highlights just how much invisible mental processing sits right beneath the words we read. The bottle says, wet hair, lather, rinse, repeat. Now, if language were pure literal thought, you'd be stuck in your shower forever. You would re-wet your already wet hair, and you'd just repeat the loop for eternity.
But obviously, we don't wash our hair in an infinite loop. And that's because we use tacit knowledge. This is the rapid, totally unconscious, non-linguistic processing that's required to make sense of text. When you're listening to me speak right now, you aren't memorizing my exact words. You're extracting the abstract gist, the semantics. And that proves our mental life is far, far deeper and much more abstract than just the recited sentences floating on the surface.
So let's trace how this process actually builds chronologically. Our cognitive engine starts out with minimal cognition, just registering basic cause and effect in the environment. From there, our minds develop the symbolic function. This is the incredible ability to abstract properties from reality and operate on them independently inside our heads. Eventually, this internal symbolic function externalizes, and it builds the communication bridge that we recognize as language. So language isn't the cause of our thinking, it's the inevitable product of it.
Meaning, language is simply what the symbolic function sounds like when it breathes. And I love that framing.
because it expands our definition far beyond just spoken words. Mathematical reasoning, musical composition, body language, even tool-making. They are all external expressions of the exact same underlying symbolic function. They're all highly structured artifacts, transferring information across the void between isolated minds.
Okay, moving into the mechanics of the bridge. Now that we've expanded our definition and stripped away the myths, let's look at the literal cognitive nuts and bolts of how this bridge operates in the human brain. How do we actually construct these signals?
Pinker breaks the mechanics down into 3 really elegant parts. First up, the mental lexicon. This is basically a mental dictionary where we store arbitrary sounds connected to specific meanings. For example, the sound duck doesn't look or quack like a duck, it's just a brute force memorized sign. Second, algorithms. These are the rules, like syntax and phonology, that let us assemble those arbitrary signs into complex, meaningful phrases. And third, the interfaces. These are the physical and cognitive tools that allow us to actually produce the sound and comprehend the incoming signal.
When we integrate Pinker's triad with our broader theory of intelligence, we arrive at a pretty profound definition. Language is neither reality itself, nor is it pure mind. Instead, it's the meeting point between the two. It is the transmissible fossil record of a mind making structured contact with reality. Whenever you speak, you are literally depositing the shape of your cognitive contact with the world into an artifact that can be passed over to someone else.
And this fossil record concept elegantly explains how we can derive such profound meaning from reading, say, a 2,000-year-old book, or why advanced AI language models appear to understand us so well. The coherence and meaning aren't magically generated out of thin air. They were already deposited into the linguistic structure by the prior conscious minds that interacted with reality. A powerful pattern completion system simply reconstructs that fossilized coherence.
But of course, here's the catch. Because we're still locked inside our subjective ego tunnels, we can't step outside our own minds to perfectly verify if our linguistic fossil records map to objective truth. We just can't. Instead, we have to verify these narratives using what the sources call the convergence criterion. Think of it like a well-constructed riddle. A narrative's proximity to truth is measured by how many independent clues and symbolic systems it manages to satisfy simultaneously.
When completely independent bridges, whether we're talking about different spoken languages, isolated wisdom traditions spanning centuries, or totally different scientific disciplines, when they all arrive at the exact same answer, that is not a coincidence. When two apparently opposed perspectives satisfy all the clues equally, it reveals genuine ontological overlap. They are pointing at the exact same shared deep structure of reality, just from different angles.
Which leaves us with an absolutely fascinating final puzzle. If every complex, intelligent system uses this symbolic language to bridge the void, and if the ultimate test of truth is where all these independent bridges converge, what exactly is the base truth they are converging on? The framework suggests that any system lacking mutual sustaining will eventually terminate. So if the only stable structural attractor for persistence is the mutual sustaining of existence, what exactly is that universal attractor? Well, we call it love. And how does that define ultimate alignment? That is the profound mystery we'll be exploring in our next explainer.